Hello again everybody, and we are back today for our second computing lesson of the week. So last lesson we started looking at Scratch. We talked about how we created our own sprites, which in this case is our rocket, and we also created our own stage in the theme of a space adventure. So we've got our background, we then use some stars, and then we have planet Earth. So today we're going to take this a step further, and we're going to have a look at coding or creating an algorithm, which we know is a set of instructions for something to follow. We're going to create an algorithm to move our spaceship around the screen. And we can do that on Scratch by using these different coloured blocks that you can see down the side. Now, whenever we start a piece of code on Scratch, we always need to start with these orange ones, these orange blocks called events. And the reason for this is because you can see that they are closed at the top, whereas these ones further down, we can see that there is a bit that is open, and they need to come later on in the code. So it's really important that whenever we're beginning a piece of code or an algorithm on Scratch, that we start with one of these closed top blocks. So for today, I'm going to show you using this one, and it says when the green flag is clicked. So that means that this piece of code, when we've completed it, will start when we click the green flag, which we can see up here, which means go. So my first block is when the green flag is clicked. So when I click the green flag, everything else that I put underneath in my code will then happen. And I want to just start by simply moving my rocket in different directions around the screen. So once I've got that closed block in, I'm going to go to the one that says motion. And we can see it says move, turn, go to, which means go to a specific point on the screen, go to a random position, point in a direction. We've got charge by, we've got different examples, and glide as well. So I'm just going to show you an example of turning my spaceship, and we turn in degrees. If I wanted to turn my spaceship all the way round, so pointing in this direction, and I want it to go all the way around and then point back up to the top, we call that 360 degrees. It's doing a full turn. I would like my spaceship to just turn 45 degrees. So it's going to do a quarter turn, like we've talked about in PE before. It's going to do a quarter turn and face this way. So it's going to turn 45 degrees, and we can see that the arrow is showing which way it's going to turn. So this one's going to turn right. If I selected this one, it would have turned left. So when the green flag is clicked, it's going to turn 45 degrees. And I would then just like to move it to a random position. So that means that Scratch is going to choose a random place on my background for my rocket to go to. Let's see if it works. So remember, when the green flag is clicked, it's going to turn right 45 degrees and then move to a random position. Let's press the green flag and find out. There we go. So we can see that my rocket has turned 45 degrees, and it chose to send my rocket over to this random position. I'm going to drag my rocket up here this time and press the green flag again. This time it chose to move over here. So we can see that every time I'm doing this, my rocket is then turning 45 degrees from where it left off. So now it's pointing down. It's going to turn 45 degrees, and I'm going to keep pressing it, and it's every time it's going to turn 45 degrees. The reason that it doesn't go back to its original position is because I haven't coded it to do that. So I've only coded it to know that every time I press the green flag, it's going to turn 45 degrees. So it doesn't matter which direction my rocket's facing, it's just going to turn 45 degrees because I haven't asked it to turn and face pointing upwards again. So we can see each time turning 45 degrees. I want to program my rocket that when I press a certain button, it's going to return to its original position. And to do that, I can choose another one of my events with the closed top, And I'm going to choose this time when the space bar is pressed. And we know that the space bar, let's see if we can see on my keyboard, is the button here that you can press for space. So when the space bar is pressed, I would like my sprite to return to its original position. So I'm going to then put go to. And then we need to choose where we would like it to go. And I would like my rocket to return to the original position that I had over here, just above planet Earth. So for this next bit, it involves a little bit of work with numbers. So you're going to then move your rocket back to where you would like it to go to. And then here you can see some different numbers. These are called coordinates. So anywhere that I move my rocket will be a certain coordinate. So we can now see it says 55, 52. If I move it down here, it says 53 minus 226. So I'm going to move it to the coordinate I'd like it to go to and then read the two numbers. So I can see it says minus 148. So I'm going to put minus 148. And then it also says minus 34. So that means it's going to go back to these exact coordinates. Let's see if it works. So it says when the spacebar is pressed, it will go to these coordinates. And we can see that when I press the spacebar, it returns. But it hasn't turned around to the direction that I would like it to face. So I then need to put point in direction. Now, when I would like my rocket to be facing, so I'm just going to use the green flag to return it to the direction I want it to face in. It says direction here, 90. So I'm going to put direction, and we can see that I want to program it to 90. So you can use it to turn. I need to turn mine until it goes to 90. Let's see if that works. So we're going to start by looking at our first block and then seeing if I can get it to return to where I'd like it to be. So when the green flag is pressed, it's going to turn 45 degrees and go to a random position. Now, when I press the space bar, it's going to go back to the coordinates over here and point in the direction I've asked it to go. There we go. So I can see it returned when I press the space bar. It's pointing in the direction I'd like it to be in, and it's in the exact same coordinates. If I wanted to change it so that my spaceship was sat just above, I can relook at the coordinates. So I can now see it says minus 137 and then 12. So let's try it again. This time I want to see that it's sat just above planet Earth. And we can see that it's done that by me changing the coordinates. So what I'd like you to do is you're going to pause the video, and I'd like you to use the different blocks down the side that you can see here and experiment. You might not want yours to turn 45 degrees. Experiment with some different numbers. See which direction you would like your rocket to move in. Would you like it to go to a random position? Would you like it to go to where the mouse is pointing? Would you like it to go to a certain coordinate? Can you use one of the different blocks to program it to go to a certain coordinate, which we could do by swapping the blocks around like this? So I would like you to just experiment. There's no right or wrong answer. We're experimenting today to see what we can get the rocket to do. What different blocks can we use to move the rocket around the screen? And then once you've had a go at moving your rocket around where you'd like to, you're going to go on to this part here where you can press the space bar and return your rocket to its original position. So pause the video for now, experiment with these bits for however long you would like to, and then come back to the video for the next step. Hello everybody, so hopefully you've come back to the video because you have finished playing around and experimenting with some of the different codes. I've also had a go experimenting with some different blocks which I'd like to show you. So rather than using go to, I chose to use the block called glide. And you can choose how many seconds you'd like to do this, because before the rocket would really quickly move across the screen. I've chosen to do it across the period of 5 seconds. So when I click the green flag, it will turn and then it will glide to the coordinate that I've chosen. So we can see that it's almost as if it's flying this time rather than just suddenly moving to that position. So that might be another block that you'd like to play around with. And again, when I press the space key, it will return to the coordinate I've chosen. What we're going to do now is we're going to create another background. And this time we'd like our background to have the same, but also add in the moon. So we're going to do the same as we did last time, but also add in the moon. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my backdrop tab down here at the bottom, and then back to my paint selection so that I can create a new backdrop. And now we can see that our original backdrop is backdrop 1, and then we're now creating backdrop 2. So I'm going to do exactly the same as last time. So use that rectangular shape to create my background. Use the paintbrush for the stars. Again, putting them in a different place. The reason my sprite's here is because the sprite will go onto whichever stage we're using. And then I'm going to go back here onto my original background, and I'm going to click on my Earth planet, and I'm going to right click on my mouse, and I'm going to copy it over onto this one. You can draw it again if you'd like to. Then, just like last time, I'm just going to draw some land on the planet. Again, doesn't matter too much where you choose to draw the land for now. And then we're also going to add in the moon. So I'm going to choose white. Draw the moon, and I'm going to put the moon over here. So this time you can see my moon. So we've got backdrop 1, which is this one with the planet Earth, and then this is the next backdrop, which includes the moon. And then once I've created my new backdrop with the Earth and the moon, I'm going to go back to my code. So I'm going to go back to my code. So this is the code all to do with my sprite. So when we click on the sprite, it will show the code, and that was when we got the sprite to move around. Then if I select the backdrops, I can also create code for the backdrops. So we've got our 2 different backdrops. Backdrop 1 is our backdrop with the Earth and the moon, and then backdrop 2 is just with the planet Earth. So what I'd like to happen is when I'm on backdrop 2, which is this one, I'd like to press the up arrow and then for it to change to backdrop 1 so that I can see the Earth and the moon. So your next job is to experiment putting different pieces of code for your backdrops. So you remember you can get your backdrops in this section over here, and then it will come up with the same blocks for you to then code your backdrops. So we've got backdrop number 2 is with just the Earth, backdrop number 1 is the Earth and the moon, and see if you can create a code to switch it between the 2. And that is everything that we're going to do today. So your next step is to have a go at changing the backdrops when you press a specific key. And that's where we're going to leave our lesson today. So I hope you have fun experimenting and playing around with Scratch. Like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. Just have a play around and see what you can get your sprites and your backdrops to do. Enjoy!